Alchemist, welcome to another edition of Culture Alchemy. I am Antoinette, and today I am joined by my mate Katie, who is part of a cinema film club, and I thought there would be no better person to speak to about the Oscars aftermath than somebody who is a self-professed cinephile. So, Katie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we haven't talked about anything yet. This is a totally raw conversation that we're having. So I have no idea if you watched the whole ceremony, where you watched it. So tell me a little bit about generally, how did you watch the ceremony last night and what were your overall thoughts on how it went?
So I went to the DC Film Society's annual Oscar watch party. So
Cool.
they've had this going for like 40 years or so. And it's just,
Huh.
they have it at a theater in Arlington, Virginia. And you can just go watch the ceremony, have some food. They have two radio hosts that do kind of an MC during commercial breaks. There's trivia, silent auction, that sort of thing. So just a way to kind of be around other people that you may or may not know who love the same type of stuff you do.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, I'm glad that you're able to do that. So admittedly, I was also supposed to go to a very similar event as well. So we have the Toronto International Film Festival Lightbox, and they did a similar thing. I ended up staying at home in my sweats watching it. But I'll be honest with you, I'm happy with that choice, which is why I also wanted to break it down with you today to hear a little bit more reaction beyond what, of course, is circulating online.
Mhm.
And yeah, to your point, I mean, it's always great to see how people respond and react to, the categories and the wins, the misses, the snubs, all that good stuff. So since you were at a watch party yesterday, this will be fantastic. I guess my first question for you was there a moment that made you sit up in your chair? Like, what was the most memorable thing that you saw last night?
I don't know that for me there was like one thing. I think it was just more the reaction, especially when Michael B. Jordan won. Everybody was like like screaming and yelling and everything like that. Because the two MCs were like kind of every time Sinners won or after that, they're like kind of going like one of the guys really, really wanted Sinners to win stuff, and he would be like, "We're 90 minutes into the show, and Sinners hasn't won anything or whatever." So obviously, Sinners won some stuff even before Michael B. Jordan did, but obviously once he won, that was like everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, yay!" That was like in the room sort of thing. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big moment. And I, even looking at the auditorium, watching it from home and seeing how that room just kind of exploded when
mhm.
he won, there was a palpable feeling that people really were rooting for him, and that, even with the SAG, the actor
Yeah.
award that he won, you could feel that people were really rooting for this guy. And I'm curious, just to hear your perspective, you take as little or much of this question as you want, or
Okay.
pass on it, but Timothée Chalamet, because we
Uh-huh.
do have to talk a little bit about him. Because going into the Oscars, I think it would have been very reasonable to say that he was the favorite for weeks and weeks and weeks on end for his performance in Marty Supreme. But for me, like, I definitely saw that the tide was turning. And I
Mhm.
don't think it has anything to do with the opera and ballet, because I think that came into effect way too late into the voting journey. But I'm curious, again, not to put you on the spot, but that's why we're here. We're here to talk about the hits, the misses, and all of that. Like, what did you think about that win? Do you think it was a snub on Timothy's part, or more it's about time on Michael's part?
I would say probably more just and even Michael B. Jordan's not that old, but obviously he's just been around a little. He is a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but I think he's older than Timothée Chalamet.
Yep.
And I think we've talked about this in the DC Film Society that like they don't like to award younger actors, and Timothy just turned 30, I think, like this past year. So he's really not that old if you think about it. So I think it was kind of maybe a mixture of his age plus like a perfect storm of whether it be the ballet, opera stuff, even things he was saying ahead of all that, and I've heard some other people say they feel like Michael B. Jordan just seems like a guy that you just, like, kinda wanna hang out with and, like, is just kind of cool and chill and really does and, like, in his speech where he's talking about not only thanking his parents, but thanking, like, everybody crew-wise, but also just, like, the people at home who watch, his movies, like, it felt, like, legitimate and not him trying to be, like, actor-y and be like, "I really want this thing," and how, like, sometimes other actors come across of, like, they really want this thing, and they don't know how to, like, act like they don't want it sort of thing, because even when his name was called, you could kinda see, like, there was this, like, stunned moment or, like, he kinda took a beat before he even, like, got up or even, I think he took a beat, got up, and then was, like, hugged I think it was his mom, and
Yeah.
then, Ryan Coogler and all these other people around him sort of thing versus, sometimes they're just, like, ready to go because especially for those if they've been winning all the precursors ahead of time.
Exactly, yeah, I think that's a great point about just the fact that people can root for Michael B. Jordan. I think there's a lot of people in that room. For me, okay, so I used to watch Friday Night Lights. I don't know
Okay.
if you ever watched that show,
I
but
didn't, but I've seen
yeah,
him in, like, Just Mercy
yeah,
and obviously the first Black Panther,
yeah.
and I've probably seen him in other things that off the top of my head, I just can't think of sorta thing.
For sure. I mean, we can always talk about he's actually, you're right. He's fairly young-ish, but he's got this deep kind of respect in Hollywood because he's been in so many different types of pictures. And I think the Coogler, obviously, duo that he's
Right.
got
Oh,
going
yeah,
on.
Creed.
Yeah, Creed, you mentioned Black Panther as well. I think that he's really, really shown a deep range. But for those who are like, oh, geez, if you really know him from when he was younger, he played a major character in the show The Wire.
Mhm.
Really impactful character in that show. And that's when I first kind of thought, this kid can really act and he's going to go really far. But to go back to my Friday Night Lights analogy, it's like if you saw like, this is actually probably not the best example I could use because I don't know, unfortunately, because of the fact that Dawson's Creek is just on my mind. It's like if you
Mhm.
were like a millennial kid and knew Dawson's Creek, it would be like watching, um, and rest in peace, James Vanderbeek in the audience watching like Joshua Jackson win an Oscar. So
Yeah.
there was a moment when Michael B was getting the Oscar and he kind of looked out to the audience and of course was waving to everybody as he was leaving the stage. And I could see Jesse Plemons, who used to be on Friday Night Lights. Those two were both like high school footballers together. This whole time they've been doing the award circuit together because of course Jesse has been promoting Begonia.
Mhm.
It was just a nice moment. It was in that moment that I realized, wow, he's actually worked his ass off for this. And irrespective of, whether people like Sinners or not, because I think this movie has actually, surprisingly to me, has divided quite a lot of people. Um, I I think this is very well deserved. So to your earlier point about people just like him, I think
Mhm.
that's it. He has a lot of, just a lot of friends in the room and just a lot of people that respect him. And so I think you're right. I think it's not necessarily a Timothée Chalamet snub, but I don't think Timothée Chalamet's whole campaign helped him. I actually went much deeper into this in a previous video, but I do think since late last year, he's been really turning people off with the kind of aggressiveness of his campaign and marketing. And I think, unfortunately, yeah, there could still be that sense of, like you said, he's quite young. And to this point, when Paul Thomas Anderson won
Mhm.
and he accepted the award for the whole crew for One Battle After Another for Best Picture, I don't think this was intentional, but he mentioned that. Oh no, sorry, it was when he got his directing award. When he got his directing award, so he's been waiting like, like 24 years or something to get this award.
Mhm.
And at one point, he stood there and he said, "Wow, you guys really make a man work hard for this." And I think something that he didn't intend, but something that I thought was really interesting about that comment is the fact that PTA has been waiting. He's been nominated like 14 times, never won, which is absolutely insane in my mind. But the fact that Timothée Chalamet is still relatively young and that perhaps some people felt like he'd be a shoo-in or that he'd expect to win, right? It's kind of crazy, actually, if you think about the longevity of most actors and the careers that they have. Um, to think about the deep bench that someone like Paul Thomas has versus Timothée Chalamet, who I like as an actor. I think he's very talented, and I think, he'll be fine. I think this will blow over. He'll be
Mhm.
fine. I do see an Oscar in his future. But I think you're right. I think wanting it too much and expecting it too much at this young age might have rubbed people the wrong way because they're grinding and hustling in that room for sometimes decades. So I think if you look at who's voting, the actors are a huge body of the voting membership. So you're right. I think in that Michael B just had, I don't know, just had a lot more favor in that room that night, I think. And so you could see it in how people responded.
Well, it's interesting that, like, because part of me is like, especially with social media and everything like that. And I think I said this once in DC Film Society, that as much as we don't want it to be, sometimes it does feel like it's like a popularity contest now. But at the same time, I say that, but then I'm like, but Sean Penn won and wasn't even there. And Sean Penn, it was his third Oscar. And I think he's just kind of like, whatever, I'm not part of, like, I don't care about this crazy elite thing. So he can just like not show up. Now, granted, Sean Penn is also much older, and obviously he has a huge body of work too. But like, I think this wasn't the first awards thing he didn't show up to. He just like really, even Kieran Culkin, who gave it, was like, he's not here or he doesn't care or something. So it's like weird, I guess. Like at some point, if you're around long enough, you can just not even show up and they'll give it to you. But when you're still like kind of early in your career, like, yeah, you still have to show up, work the room, say, you know, the right thing or rub the right with the right people and not tick people off, sort of thing.
Totally. And we'll get into the Sean Penn of it all in a moment, because that was an amazing moment, I felt. Yes, I totally agree with you. I think that's probably a factor as well. He hasn't earned his dues yet in some people's minds to be able to have the, I don't know. I actually don't think I think he's just trying to strive for greatness. And I don't think it's as much arrogance as people think, but it might come off that way on someone who's a little bit younger, and humility goes a long way. So you're absolutely right. With Sean Penn. Okay. So Best Supporting Actor, let's get into that. Because that was incredible. I actually wasn't surprised. Like, I figured he was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of speculation as to whether or not he was going to actually show up, though.
Right.
So that was incredible that he didn't even show up for that. But that's kind of, he's only showed up for the Globes, ironically, and he famously was smoking cigarettes in the front row the entire time. What are your thoughts on that category? Were you expecting it to be a Sean Penn win? And what do you think about him not showing up? Do you think celebrities, for example, in this situation, do they have an obligation to show up to support their work?
So as far as the first part goes, I mean, I kind of thought maybe it was going to be Stellan Skarsgård, more for like one of those, we'll give it to you for your like body of work type things. Just because he hasn't had one. And like I said, Penn already has two. So they might have just been like, okay, let's spread the wealth. Obviously that's not what happened. And also because I think Stellan Skarsgård, I think has been pretty open about, I think he's struggling maybe with some like being able to read lines, or there's some like health things going on there. So I'm not sure if, assuming that's true, like how much, longer he'll be able to act just because of that sort of thing. As far as the second part of your question goes, I mean, you would think like if you're being nominated, you would want to show up to support, like not only to show your face, but to support like the rest of your cast and crew and stuff. But at the same time, I think like from the Academy, like when you nominate somebody like Sean Penn, like you shouldn't be that surprised. I mean, I haven't looked this up to see like when he won the last two times. I feel like he did show up for Mystic River.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't know about the other one. So, but yeah, like I think just certain people, like we shouldn't really be surprised if he doesn't show up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, he has been a very controversial. He's kind of had his ebbs and flows as far as his controversial figure goes, but.
Yeah, that's Sean Penn. And that's exactly what I expect of him. And he almost would be deadlier if he did show up, if I'm being totally honest. So on some level, it's kind of like, I want him to show up because if he actually went and got on the microphone, can you imagine what he would actually say? So maybe on some level, it's like, the producers may also brave a sigh of relief that we'll just mail him the award. That's great. And leave it at that and let the work speak for itself. But yeah, he's been very vocal about like, he doesn't really want to buy into Hollywood, and that's not really his thing. It's wild that he gets away with it, but the man can act his ass off. And as you said, he now joins this elite group of people that includes like Daniel Day-Lewis, Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson. There are very few people that have 3 Oscars. So I did think he was going to win, because when I saw that the tide was turning with the actor and with the BAFTA, I was like, oh shit, I think he's going to win this thing. But I did have a part of me that really hoped that Stalin would get it because, as you said, he's 74. So, I don't know how many more films he has in him, but hopefully, yeah, maybe there'll be another chance to maybe get some more work based on what he did here.
Right.
So, you never know. But yeah, it's amazing to see that in spite of Sean Penn, in spite of himself, he could still he could still win. People will still vote for him. So there's something that people almost respect about his stance. It's maybe the authenticity of it, or as a person, I'm sure people in the audience really like him as a person because he does stand for something, and he's very, very politically active. His humanitarian work. There's something people like about him as a person, and I think you earlier said that unfortunately sometimes these things are popularity contests. I totally agree. I think it is. I think you're doing a campaign. It's called a campaign for a reason. And so there's a balance between how much you show up, all the interviews you're doing, but Sean Penn just made it his brand to not do any of this. He's just above it. So it's kind of, I find it very amusing actually, and I would have loved to have seen him be there just for the simple fact that you give him a microphone, you've got to have like a 20-30 second delay on this man because he's so dangerous. But I love him for that as well too. So I think that was well deserved for sure. And I got to say too, like when we talked about best supporting, now we might as well go over to best supporting actress because what were your thoughts on that? Were you expecting the Madigan win?
I was kind of like not really sure with that one because
Yeah.
I know that Tiana Taylor was like in the beginning the favorite, and then as other awards were coming, it seemed like no, it was going to be more Amy, and turns out that's the way it was. So I was like, I was still guessing Tiana Taylor for some reason. Turns out I was wrong, sort of thing. But once again, Tiana Taylor, I'm not sure how old she is, but obviously she hasn't been around as long as Amy Madison. So it could, and especially because they don't typically give horror like acting awards to horror
Yeah.
movies. So once again, it could be a mixture of their performance and just like years of body of work type of thing.
Yeah.
And knowing that, like, okay, Weapons wasn't gonna get anything else.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when it's a genre film like Weapons, you don't expect it to pick up any hardware, and you could be right. I mean, that's maybe where they decided to give it its flowers with Amy Madigan's performance. I'm going to be totally honest. I did see this one coming. I called it because I could see again which way the train was was moving when I saw her pick up the actor, and then she earlier picked up a critics. Like it was like, but it was back and forth, like you said, between her, Tiana, and Women Misaku. So it was this one. I honestly held my breath until the envelope was open because I had no idea, but I kind of felt maybe it'll be Madigan based on the actor. But it was surprising, and 40 years since the last time she was on that stage. So I think there's also some stories and narratives around the wins that also,
Mhm.
sometimes position people more than others. And you're right. I think Tiana, I personally think she's going to EGOT in our lifetime. I can totally see that because she's just a triple threat, like the music, the movies. I mean, she's obviously going to cross over, I'm sure, into musicals if she wants to. She's a dancer. She's got everything.
Mhm.
So she's got time, and she'll definitely be back in the nominations at some point in time as well, too. So I think
I will say
probably was the right
she
call.
seemed like one person when they would pay in the audience, that she was one of the people they paid to. She seemed like legitimately happy for not only Amy, but anybody that was like one that
Yeah.
wasn't like one battle after another sort of thing. Because she was always like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah," sort of thing. So she seemed like
Yeah.
legitimately like, "Hey," I'm sure she wanted it, but at the same time, happy for like other people. Because one thing that I did notice is like pretty much all the winners were talking about like how they got to know like all the other people in their category because they spent a long time with these people. I mean, they may have already known these people from like other projects or something, but then once the campaign starts, they're all at the same awards, they're at the same
Yep.
dinners, they're at the same press conferences or whatever. So they do get to know these people as just like people and not just like, oh, you're my competitor or whatever sort of thing too. So
That's so true. I don't remember who made the joke about this, but early in the award season, there was one show. If anybody knows, toss in the chat, let us know. But there was one award show earlier where the host actually said, "You better get comfortable with with your nominees because you're going to be spending the next 3 or 4 months with them. You're going to see them more than you're going to see your family." And I think you're right. Like they're going to spend a lot of time with each other. And then I think Madigan has to me anyway, seems like she has an attitude where I'm just happy to be back in the conversation. Like, this is amazing. Like, she just literally, even last night, picked it up. She's like, oh my God, like, this is wild, you know? So I think she's just happy to be there. I think Tana Taylor is like, oh, like, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be in the conversation. So I think there was a lot of camaraderie, especially among the best supporting actresses, because they were all sort of like, in a variety of different ways, kind of happy to just be there and have their films get the promotion. So yeah, I thought that was it seemed like anyways, a lot of camaraderie amongst them. And then, I mean, we talked about Best Actor, of course, Michael B. Jordan finally getting his Oscar. It was a great moment for many of us. And I am very biased towards Sinner. So I also want to ask you about, well, we got to talk about Best Picture. But before I even go there, let's finally talk about PTA, the long-awaited win. So Best Directing. Were we surprised when that went that way?
No, I mean, it was funny because, even after it happened at the party, like, the one guy who was really wanting Sinners was like, I mean, I think on one level was happy for him, but also just was like, I think to your point, it was like, Sinners is my movie, and just really wants that to happen. But I think wasn't that shocked that it was going to be, PTA sort of thing.
He was due. He was due. And I think he should have won. Personally, he should have won for There Will Be Blood. I think he was snubbed that year. But, I mean, he's got such a huge filmography. It's like any one of his films, I think, really could have been deserving. And to the point that he made when he accepted the Best Picture, he was talking a bit about the year that Dog Day Afternoon and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and a slew of other movies were like all together in that Best Picture category. And he's like, and nobody really talks about those movies being losers in the Best Picture category. It's like, it doesn't really matter. So I think this was a year as well. There was just so much great cinema. So it speaks to that. But yeah, I was happy to see Coogler get the original screenplay. If that didn't happen, then I don't really believe in nothing no more, man, because I don't know how much more original that screenplay could be. And it needed its flowers. I'm glad that aside from the record-breaking 16 nominations, I'm glad that Coogler got a chance to get up and speak on the original screenplay win. That was necessary. That needed to happen, or something's very wrong.
I thought, I mean, not that I really thought this was going to happen. I thought maybe Blue Moon would have gotten a writing. Just because a lot of times they will award like one of the writing, either adapted or original, for something that is not either wasn't nominated for Best Picture, which was that, or is not going to win. It's kind of like, here's your second either fallback
consolation prize.
Which, I guess. Which I guess, to be fair, like maybe that was for Sinners, because it didn't win. And perhaps if Sinners had been in like either not been nominated or been in another category, Blue Moon would have won, because it's a very like talky type movie, very writerly.
That's true, actually. I mean, I saw Blue Moon a couple hours before the ceremony itself, and I love Richard Linklater. Actually, I would say probably dare say one of my favorite directors. So he's kind of a stroll. He doesn't really. He's not a loud director. Like he really, I kind of expected it to be just dialogue, but it really kind of was just Ethan Hawke sitting in one place the whole time carrying that movie. It was kind of astounding, actually, on Ethan Hawke's part, but him and Linklater are just another magical duo, right?
But then I felt they said Linklater didn't write it. It was somebody else that wrote it. So maybe that's where it would have been more likely if he had written it.
And that makes sense. That makes sense now, because I think with Coogler, well, I won't go on my high about Coogler because I've done many videos about this. But it's just, it's beyond me that movie worked. It shouldn't have worked on paper. I can't even imagine like pitching that to somebody. It has to be somebody who's already bankable. So like you have to be Ryan Coogler and be bankable to go into a studio and have the balls to say something like that. Like, I'm going to do a vampire period piece, musical / like it's bananas, man. So the fact that it worked, and the fact that he had the foresight to cast, and of course, he worked with a casting director, but behind the scenes, we know that he did a lot of rallying to get certain people on the craft of the movie to make it look a certain way and feel a certain way. And I think it was really visionary how he put that together. And in fact, the person who won cinematography, so it was the first woman to win cinematography last night, she's mentioned this in some of the media she's done, that Ryan Coogler had to really fight to put her there, to keep her there. They wanted to replace her with somebody else. and Ryan Coogler really fought to make sure he had almost, I think he said 50-50 representation of men and women behind the camera too. So he's really intentional about who he puts in those positions around him when he's creating like a team and he has vision. He is really, really, really original. And so it makes sense to me when he's writing a script that the way he wrote that script, I think it's honestly, it was the best script out of the group that were there, in my personal opinion. But yeah, you're right. I think it's like sometimes the consolation prize to give the writer the award when you know the movie is not going to win. And so to that, I'm going to move on to Best Picture because there's who I wanted to win and who actually won. And I loved one battle after another. Let me preface this with that because I made a video, which is now going to age very poorly, where I kind of said I thought that we were going to have a Moonlight, La La Land situation where whoever read the envelope was going to be shocked that it was going to go to Sinners. I thought Sinners might squeak it out because it was picking up so much momentum in the latter weeks. But what were your thoughts when Best Picture was announced? What was the reaction in the room where you were watching it?
I think everybody was happy. I don't know that it was as big as the reaction of like Michael B. Jordan or something, just because I think that particular race had been, to your earlier point. So like for a while it was Timmy, then it was the guy from Secret Agent, then it was this person. So I think because that back and forth. So I think this time it was just like, okay, we what one is what we thought was going to win, or was at least had a very high percentage of winning. And I think to the earlier point with PTA winning, like I've heard some people talk about, they're glad he won for this, as opposed to sometimes what happens with directors, if it's like been a long time coming, they win for a movie that's just kind of like, it's okay. Like it's not their best, but it's just like they're due. Like I think people have referenced Martin Scorsese or Ron Howard that the year they won, perhaps it wasn't like their strongest movies, but it was after like a 20-30 year career. So I think people have been like, well, at least this is still for like a strong movie.
Yeah, you can't fault it. It was a great movie. And I loved it. I left the theater thinking, oh my God, that was like a 2.5 hour movie, but it just flew by. It was really well done. And I think, I think both movies have left a mark for sure on the culture, irrespective of who took the statue home. So I think I was happy to see that they all got recognized. And, as we're winding down as well, I do want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the other things that happened throughout the night. So let's start with Conan O'Brien. Mm-hmm. How did you feel about him as a host?
I mean, I really liked him last year. I felt like this year, and I don't know that this was like a Cohen problem, it just felt like the energy wasn't as maybe hyped up as previous years. And I was thinking about this actually when I left to come home is, yes, there was the K-pop song, but there wasn't like how some years there's been like a big song or dance number leading into the show. There also wasn't, it seemed like most of the clips were only related to the stuff that was nominated and not so much like, here's what in 2025, this is all the films, whether they were nominated or not. Like a lot of times when they come back from commercial break, they'll have like a Best Picture clip, but then they also are doing just like love the film or, for that year, or if it's a big anniversary or something. Or they'll have like sometimes they'll have like emotional songs, like when Lady Gaga, the year she sang a song for like this documentary about like sexual assault on campus, and then she brought out all these people who had been victims, and you're just like, I haven't even seen that movie and I just wanted to win because that's like obviously such an emotional thing. Or even the year she and Bradley Cooper were singing the song from A Star Is Born too, just like them together sort of thing. And I just didn't feel like, and I don't know if it's because we've just the world we're living in, or so many years where you had like the slap, you had the confusion over who won, the whole Moonlight, La La Land thing. Then you've had like the writer strike, the actor strike. If like there's just this need to have like calm, which I definitely felt like there was last year, but there was just something missing where it's just kind of like, okay. Like,
oh, that's so interesting.
I mean, there were definitely, I think, funny bits, but just as far as just the energy the whole time.
But. Yeah. And I won't even disagree with you. I thought he did a great job. I think it was tough to do it this year because things were so heavy outside the theater. There's so much going on. And I think he did a good job of finding, well, he set the tone right away. Like, I kind of liked the opening montage with the weapons thing. I thought that was really great. I think he's also very self-depreciating. So he's the right type of person to host in that crowd, because that crowd doesn't really like when you take shots at them. We've seen many other hosts fall to their knees because they were a little too roasty. And I think with Conan, he's got the right balance, and he's friends with a lot of people in the room. So I think that helps him. But yeah, there's an interesting point. Like, I felt like a lot of things, you said that it's not necessarily a Conan thing, maybe. I picked up on, if anything, I'll just say, I thought it was a good show. I thought he did a great job. If he wants to come back next year, I think he would almost certainly be asked again. But it would, for me, feel like there were some production things that maybe choices. They were writing a tight ship too. I mean, I've never seen them retract a mic from so many people so quickly. That was wild.
That's the thing, is that they have, not only this year, but the past, I feel like 2 years, they've been able to end at a pretty decent hour.
Yeah.
So you would think because of that, let the people, especially these people who, you know, are on some of the smaller categories, who this is like their one chance to get up there, let them finish talking. Like, because we ended like 10:40 Eastern time. So I think, you know, just letting these people talk for another like 2 or 3 minutes isn't gonna be the end of the world either. I liked the bridesmaid bit, but I thought it would have worked better, like, if they were giving away like one of the writing awards, because obviously that movie is known for its writing more than sound. So sometimes when they, and this isn't, I don't think, unique to this year, but I just feel like sometimes when they put the, like, whoever's doing like the awards, sometimes you're like, that's an interesting choice of why you paired that award with that person or that group or something. Because you're like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point too. There were some really surprise pairings, and one of them for me was Zendaya. When Zendaya, I'm not surprised that she was with Robert Pattinson, because we know they have a movie coming out, but we didn't know she was going to be coming out. She didn't walk the red carpet, and that's the thing that's so cool about her, is that she can come out and suddenly everybody is just like, oh, Zendaya. She just has that power to present whatever the hell she wants, frankly.
She was probably wanting to avoid questions about whether she and Tom Holland are actually married.
Exactly. So that was another thing that I thought was very interesting. And I really think, and I'm guilty as charged, I definitely zoomed in to look at her ring finger. And I did notice a stack. I did notice there was a band there. She hasn't said anything, but I think that's cooler that she hasn't. I think letting us like think about whether she is married, isn't married. She probably is, because we know that her stylist let that slip on another carpet. But the fact that she hasn't confirmed it, that her and Tom just don't feel the need to do any of that, is what makes them so just lovable as a couple. I think that they keep things for themselves. They're not on the Timothée Chalamet plan where they're just overexposed right now.
Right.
So I think that's a cool thing. And I think you're right. Some of the pairings were odd. I think some of the production choices, we already talked about, like cutting people off like mid-sentence and stuff. We saw the first ever tie for short for short action, went twice as long as Camilla and Jenny joked. But that was really interesting. And then the In Memoriam. The In Memoriam this year, I mean, we lost a lot of people this year, a lot of big legendary stars of stage and screen. So I personally thought it was very tasteful how they did it. I really liked the Rob Reiner, like call out and bringing Billy Crystal out. I also liked bringing out Rachel McAdams to talk about Catherine O'Hara and, of course, her friend Diane Keaton. And then Barbara Streisand comes out and talks about Robert Redford. And, of course, I figured Robert Redford will have his own sort of segment. What did you think about that? Because I've heard a number of different thoughts on that one.
So I thought what she said was very sweet. Obviously, when she started singing, you can kind of tell, like, she's older and perhaps hasn't been singing for a while because her voice wasn't the strongest. But at the same time, it's like Barbara Streisand. I mean, and she's I think she's in her 80s now. We should all be so lucky, whether you're a singer or not, but to be able to, get up there and talk, let alone sing in front of like thousands of people plus however many millions of people are watching at home. More power to her, especially as somebody who doesn't seem like she tours that much on, or does. I think she had a record come out like maybe a year or two or so ago, but she's not somebody who's constantly putting out new music. So once again, more power to her. So I thought what she said was nice. It was just, And I mean, like, the sentiment of behind the song obviously is nice because it's a famous song and it's from a movie that they were in together that, meant a lot to a lot of people. So,
Yeah, it's a tough one too, because I'm sure that was a very emotional moment for her. And
mhm.
she's trying to, get through, the actual performance, say what she needs to say. I think personally it was a little bit awkward. It felt like maybe she had skipped rehearsal or something. But at the same time, like you said, she's a legend, man. So she can kind of do whatever she wants up there. But it felt like kind of almost like she probably told them, this is what I'm gonna do. Like they probably gave her some notes and she's like, no, no, cool. This is what I'm gonna do. So it
She's
felt
like,
that way.
do you know I'm Barbara Streisand?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so I was thinking it felt like hers was not rehearsed, but at the same time, yeah, she's Barbara Streisand. She's gonna do
Yeah.
what she's gonna do. And I think that it almost, yeah, I could tell that that was a really special relationship as well too. So yeah, I could imagine it was probably an emotional moment for her too, and hard to stay on script. But yeah, the Memoriam In Memoriam is always difficult because it's kind of like this beat within the show that it immediately kind of brings the energy down. But then they did it in the most tasteful way I think that you could do
Yeah.
it. And
I think it was nice that they compared to I feel like most years, it's just, like, some random person that comes out and is,
yeah,
like, talking about the people we lost, and then cuts to whatever, like, PowerPoint or whatever they're doing, as opposed to
yeah,
it obviously, like, being very personalized because it was, Billy Crystal, who not only was in movies with Rob
yeah,
Reiner, but they were, like, lifelong friends, and then Rachel McAdams had been in I forgot, she had actually been in 2 movies with Diane Keaton.
yeah.
And then obviously Barbara Streisand, so it was, like, a personal connection. It wasn't just like, "Okay, what actress or actor are we gonna make be like, say this thing about the people we've lost,"
Yeah.
and then we'll cut to sad music
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough one to
stuff,
do every single
so
year.
but then, of course, the internet does what the internet does, which is the next thing is, "Okay, who was left out?"
Yeah, okay, so did anybody, like, really egregious get left out? Because I haven't really been following
Um,
it.
the only people I've noticed so far is they mentioned, James Van Der Beek and
Oh,
Eric
of
and, yeah, Eric, Dane, but then I saw, like, a clip on Instagram where they were talking to, oh, what's her
mm,
face? From Grey's Anatomy, Shonda Rhimes,
yeah,
about Eric Dane, and she pointed out that, like, he was more of a TV actor, like, yes, he had been in some movies, but probably both him and James Van Der Beek, when it comes to Emmys, that's where they'll probably be more recognized because they were more famous from TV than they were movies.
it's funny because I earlier mentioned James Van Der Beek, and then I asked you, has anyone been left out? James Van Der Beek. But you're right, that's why I wouldn't have thought of that as an omission for the same reason. It's like he was obviously famous more so. I know he did film, but like you think of him as TV, right? So
Yeah.
you're right. I think that's going to be coming, that kind of tribute, and
I
that one's going to be really, really
I I
gut-wrenching.
think I haven't seen the internet say this, but I think they left out Gene Hackman, maybe?
Did Gene Hackman die this year or did he die the year before? I
I
feel like
don't
we
I
saw him the year
or
before.
maybe he was, like, the end of
Ooh.
2020. Yeah, I'd have to look and see which
Yeah.
year it was, but
Yeah, I'll check that. If it's the case, I'll add something to the conversation when I do the edit. But like, that's the thing about this. You're almost always gonna leave somebody out. And so,
well, and then when they go to commercial break, they
ooh.
do have a little thing at the bottom of the screen that's like, "For more people," basically, that
Oh, I didn't even see that.
scan this QR code or go to this website, as
Wow.
if
Okay.
you're gonna go and be like,
Scan the QR.
"Okay, who did they miss?" I mean, maybe
Oh,
their family
wow.
will, but,
Oh
like,
my
as if the
God.
main audience is gonna be like, "Okay, what famous person did they leave out? Let me go to this
Right.
website."
Oh,
Oh,
scan the QR code, which is another thing I think as they're getting ready to like migrate to YouTube, they're
mhm.
obviously trying to appeal to a younger audience. So I did feel elements of that obviously were throughout the show all night, as was the AI theme, like AI is coming for us, God help us kind of theme was throughout most of the like skits and sketches in between the awards and stuff, which I wasn't mad about it. I think it's probably something that is on the minds of a lot of fans, but it will be very interesting to see when it goes to YouTube like how it's produced then, what it looks like. Because I didn't even notice that whole situation. Like for more people, go to go to this website. That's insane, but also expected. You cannot have an exhaustive list of people. And I think if you look at, I keep calling it SAG. Everyone's calling it SAG. If you look at the actors and the union, like I'm sure they must have a huge list of people from all the different, crafts that are available, and they're only really going to show a handful. So yeah, that
Right.
kind of makes sense. I guess that's the way it would go down, but it does feel a little bit like, oof, you didn't make the cut. It's like a little bit of a, yeah. Again, popular. Who's popular? Who really left a dent? And that's somewhat subjective. So there will always be people who will be upset with who got left out, right? But I think it
And
was
it did
tastefully done.
yeah, it does also make me think about how we don't have really people, whether it be, like, from an actor or director's position, like, where is the Rob Reiner I know he did, like, a lot of different types of genre movies,
Hmm.
but, like, where is that, like, person now in terms of, like, somebody who's kinda doing those type of movies or the type of Diane Keaton movies? Like, obviously, nobody
Mm.
will replace them, but in terms of, like, American President, Stand By Me, When Harry Met Sally, like, or even, like, when Nora Ephron passed, which has been several years ago, like, where's the new Nora Ephron? Or, like, Nancy Meyers is still alive, but she's up there in age, and,
Yeah.
like, who's gonna be the new, like, Nancy Meyers? Like, we're not getting a lot of, like even with you were talking about the as they're trying to bring in new people, like, they're not really getting a lot of, like, new people doing those type of
Mm.
stuff, or if they are, it's, like, straight to streamers where you can argue that the quality may not be the best, sort of thing.
It's a
Because, like, Jacob Elordi, Timothée Chalamet, obviously, they're in movies, but they're not doing, like they're not yet being, like, the president of the United States or something, or
yeah.
the rom-coms they're in are, once again, based off, like, teenage books that are straight to Netflix, type thing.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why we saw, not to suggest that it wasn't deserved, because I think Jacob Elordi was very good in Frankenstein. I actually
Mhm.
really liked him in Frankenstein. And this is why I think we're seeing it shift a little bit. Like there are turning points. I think one turning point was Oscar So White. That
Mhm.
controversy, they majorly course corrected. And then I think also too, they're now realizing, oh yeah, nobody is going to the theater anymore. They're streaming things now, and we're going to YouTube. So I think we need to be a little bit more palatable to younger people, because that's the viewership as they're leaving broadcast television. So I think we're going to start to see things like Sinners, which is a genre movie, Weapons, a genre movie, the Cinematic Box Office Award that's awarded on the Globes. I think that is an attempt to stay relevant. I really think that they're really realizing, like, yeah, we can't always give prestige films flowers. Like, we have to look beyond that, and why we are seeing younger actors starting to also get a little bit more shine at the ceremonies. So I think they're doing it in tacit ways. I think they're also like creating those like montages. I don't like interstitials between the awards that like Conan does. He's so good at that because that's like his bread and butter, like is sketch, right?
Mhm.
But uh, he's got a way of doing it that I think any one of those clips could be viral. Like any one of them could be on TikTok or on Instagram, and I think they're producing the show with that in mind. So I
Yeah.
see them doing that in how they produce it. But I think you're right. And there could never be another Nora Ephron. There could never be another Rob Reiner. But who could step up to kind of fill the gap, if that can even be
Right.
said? That's going to be like, poof, that's time. And I think that's the thing that we were talking about earlier when it comes to someone like a Chalamet.
Mhm.
He's so relatively young. And in terms of the maturity of his career, he's
Mhm.
already got a great catalog. But let's see what he looks like in like 5 years, in 10 years. And then we're going to have the next wave of people coming in. And then once they have notoriety as actors, once they have credibility as actors, I think a lot of them naturally just pivot and become directors and start to
Mhm.
go behind the camera. So I'm seeing that already with, people that have started taking on directorial roles. A lot of women too are deciding, like, you know what, I'm going to get behind the camera now. Like Maggie
Mhm.
Gyllenhaal, though I don't know how successful she was this year at the Pride, but Scarlett Johansson put out a movie last year as well too. We're seeing, like, I haven't seen Leo do it yet. I think he knows his lane is acting. That's what he
Mhm.
likes to do. But Leo is somebody I'd love to see him direct. I'd love to see him
Mhm.
try and get behind the camera if he even desires to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's an old guard, and I think you're right. You can see some of the royalty and people aging out on the carpet, and then the new guard that's kind of coming in. And um, I
'Cause
think,
even, like,
yeah,
Jennifer Lopez and Emma Stone, who I love, but they're not like, the type of stuff they're picking is much more, I feel like, deep, dark, and serious on, like, Jennifer,
yeah,
uh, uh
Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence. Thank you. So many Jeffers out there.
I know so many Jennifers. Garner,
And then
Lawrence, Hudson. Yeah.
yeah, seriously. And then Emma Stone's like just because with her relationship with Yorgo is like much more weird and strange and stuff.
Yeah. And I love that relationship, by the way, too. I think Begonia and any other year, I would have been so behind that as like a best picture, because the more I look at it and the more I've seen it a few times since the first viewing, I really think that movie had everything that would normally be like a best picture kind of performance. I think that's a snub in my mind that like Lanthimos wasn't actually nominated for that. So I think it was that good. But again, like it was such a great year for film that there were really no best pictures, no snubs. It was just like, we can only nominate these many. Like, what are we going to do? We have to just make the call. So I think that's speaks to, yeah, there's a lot of people that want to tell stories. And I think in these times that we're living in right now, hopefully it'll answer the question you had before about what's happening with the new generation of filmmakers. I think last night, and why I continue to think conversations like this, I like to have them, is because it's important. Like film is important, and storytelling more so is important, especially when we have chaos in the world and people need to tell their stories and need to use these platforms that they have to also promote change, like broader change. And I was really glad to see a lot of movies that, well, I'll personally go and check out a lot of the shorts now too, because of what I saw last night. And I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this year is going to look like, because it's going to be another year full of like blockbusters and superheroes and explosions. So after last year's really kind of like more, I don't know, artsy sort of
I mean,
films, I think this year we're gonna get a lot more of the Marvel sort of world. So I do think it'll be interesting to see what next year's best pictures are going to look like, because
yeah.
very different crop of films are going to be in that conversation as well, with like Dune coming out, Avengers coming out. There's so many other pictures as well that escape my mind right now, but are kind of in more of the, I don't know, the superhero genre. So maybe
Yeah.
that's going to bring in a younger audience as well to watch the show. But I guess
I
we will
would
see.
I would recommend the short Jane Austen's period drama. It's on
Okay.
YouTube and it's kind of like because I went and saw the shorts or like the live action animation, and it's sort of imagine like say at the end of like Pride and Prejudice, Mr.
Yeah.
Darcy's, in the middle of proposing, and then all of a sudden Elizabeth gets her period and it's like very obvious and he starts freaking out because it was supposed to be obviously a time where like women only talked about certain things, men didn't talk about the same
Mm.
things as far as your bodies. And it's also interesting because we are getting a new Pride and Prejudice. I think it's a limited series on Netflix, and a new Sense and Sensibility movies coming out. And then
Oh,
obviously you have the Bridgerton, craze. So
yep.
it's like definitely in that like time period type stuff.
Yeah, there's a big push. You're so right. A lot of Regency stuff is coming out right now, which is kind of interesting. I love that period, by the way. I love Jane
And then
Austen, so
and
I
and
hope
then
for more.
obviously we just had Wuthering Heights come out too.
Yep.
I mean, which is obviously a whole other
A
conversation.
whole other conversation, my goodness. But I do think that it does speak to like people's yearning for, maybe yearning in the time, and like the sort of like the social norms and complexity of society. Then it's going to be interesting to see then those adaptations come out and see who's attached to those pictures. So I'm definitely going to I'll definitely go check out Jane Austen's period piece. So I didn't even know it was on YouTube. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. I'll definitely check that out because I'm very curious about that one as well. And I think, yeah, this was a great show all in all. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on, but I think I've tried to, bring us to our to land this plane multiple times. But there's just so much to talk about in like a 3 hour plus show.
Yeah.
But I do want to touch on two things, and I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
So one thing I want to talk about is musical performances. I know you said that for maybe you would have liked to have seen more of the if I can say, sort of like awarded pictures. Nominees were great, like montages of their
Mhm.
work were great. But maybe some of the other pictures would have been nice too. What we did get, however, last night was we got a few musical performances. And I'm just wondering, what were your thoughts on the musical performances that we did see last night?
I mean, I think they were fine, but maybe I say fine just because I wasn't familiar with them going
Hmm.
in. So it wasn't one of those, I've not been on the K-pop Demon Hunter
Okay.
craze
You
that
have been
the
singing
rest of the
Golden all
world,
this time? Yeah.
yeah, has been, or the same thing. I wasn't familiar. I still haven't seen Sinners. Sorry.
You haven't
Don't.
seen it at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
So
okay,
I wasn't familiar with the song.
okay.
As and then any but the thing is, some years you can have not seen the movie, but the song is playing, like, everywhere.
Yeah.
Even now when we don't, like, listen to songs on the radio or, as much sometimes, you can still hear it, like, everywhere. I think it was just a case of, like, apparently I'm just not listening to the right places, I guess, because I wasn't familiar with those songs versus, like, okay, so, like, the year Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper went up there and did "Shallow," like,
Yeah.
obviously, the movie was big, but also, like, people were doing, like, "Shallow" and, like, karaoke bars and things like that.
Yes.
So I think
Yeah.
it would have, like, kind of a life of its own beyond just, like, the movie. And
Yeah.
maybe
That's
especially
true.
K-pop
Mm.
Demon Hunters might as well because K-pop just as a type of music is, like, becoming more of a thing, too. So I think that was just more of a me thing as opposed to anything with their performance, sort of thing. I mean, it was cool when the Sinner song, started to go out into the audience,
Mm.
sort of thing. And then with the song, the running joke is always that, Diane Warren, like, she'll always do
Yeah.
songs because until
Yeah.
she wins, because it's always like when people
Yeah.
are making, like, their best of list or the things they think will get nominated for song, they're like, "Okay, whatever Diane Warren song, we have to leave a place for it." And they get
Absolutely. It
more
wouldn't be
out
right. It wouldn't be right if she wasn't nominated. It's true. It's so true. No, I mean, I'm excited for you when you do get around to Sinners, and I'd love to, hear what you actually think because there's been
of it.
so much, I hesitate to say the word hype, but
Mhm.
obviously, like, yeah, it's been talked about for over a year now.
Yeah.
So,
So, and my only hesitation is I'm not a big horror fan.
okay,
And so but then I've talked to some people who are not horror fans either, and they were like,
I'm
"Oh,
not.
it's not like horror in a typical way." They were saying even for them who don't like overly violent stuff, they were able to handle it. And I was like, "Okay." Well, hearing that from several people, I'm like, "Okay, that makes me feel like I could probably deal with it."
100%. I'm not a big horror person. I love this movie.
Okay.
So I don't think it's one that you would dislike if you normally don't like horror.
Okay.
I think there's something in it that everyone can kind of walk away with. But yeah, I'll leave it to you because you never know. You never know. It is a
Yeah.
personal thing, and I have friends who loved One Battle and were confused by Sinners who were like, I don't get this. And we usually intersect on lots of things. And then some people who are like, I love Sinners. I think it's amazing. And we're like, I have met those people that are like, One Battle was fine. So that's the thing that's so wonderful about art. And it's wildly subjective. So yeah, I do think you're right though. It's one of those movies that I think if you're not into horror, you might hesitate to go watch it. But definitely go watch it. It's just so much more than that kind of a film. It's
Yeah.
like a historical history lesson as well. It's just many things. But okay. We have talked some of the big, awards given out of the night. I think we've talked a little bit about how we felt Conan went. We think he did all right. And I
Mhm.
personally love Conan. Bring him back next year if that's the case. He's good at keeping things moving when it's awkward. And there were a lot of awkward moments and pauses. And I think he's good at sitting in cringe. That's his
Mhm.
lane. He's perfect host in that respect.
Well,
Um,
he is host for life now, as they said at the
host
very
for
end.
life. Yeah. Host
At
for
the little,
life.
like it was almost like a post-credit
Post
to the
credit.
Oscars.
Yeah. I loved it. I loved it because I loved that part of One Battle as well. It was just fantastic. Yeah. You need a host who doesn't take himself too seriously. Conan fits the bill all the way. Um, I don't know, are you a fashion girl? Like, were you watching the red carpet at all?
I'm not a huge fashion person. I did like when I got to the theater where I saw it, it was around 6, so they were on the red carpet, so kind of here and there, sort of thing. I mean, even though I'm not a fashion person, there have been years where you're kind of like, "Oh, wow, that was a choice."
That was a choice. Okay, so who for you? We'll wrap up with something a little bit lighter here,
Okay.
because also a nice plug for a fashion Oscars video that I'm going to be putting out later on this week, and because I think the fashion tells a story as well,
Mhm.
and there were some interesting looks. Who would you say was your best dress, and who do you think was like the biggest risk taker? Maybe not necessarily someone that you liked, but who you definitely turned your head.
I must have missed a lot of the risk-taking ones this year,
Mm.
so I don't remember seeing anybody that was like, "Oh, well, that was interesting," whether it be, like, the color or what it was what body parts it was showing or not showing,
Yeah.
sometimes it can go that way. I mean,
Yeah.
I like, the ones that stood out to me that I just thought were nice was, like and was just kinda simple were, like, Emma Stone or Elle Fanning, just seemed like very nice, simple, classic, not, like, too over the top, sort
That's
of thing.
Yeah, they both kind of were, like, off-white kind of situations as well too, which was interesting that you pointed those 2 out. Yeah, Elle Fanning was like a princess moment. It was, like, very classic. I remember her dress very, very well. Emma Stone as well too was, like, wearing this, like she's been wearing a lot of more subdued things all season, and she's got 2 Oscars, and she's good. She's kind of for me, it was, like, the most, like, understated. It was very minimally, understated classic elegance.
Mhm.
That's funny because I just
Maybe
talked about
she
Emma Stone.
maybe
Yeah.
because she knew she wasn't gonna win, so she was just
Right.
like, "I'm here to, like yes, I'm nominated, but, like, I'm just here to, like, chill."
Yeah,
Like, there's if
totally.
I mean, obviously, there could have always been a surprise or upset, but, like, I'm sure if you're nominated, and especially if you're somebody who's already got to, and you're not, like, the favorite to win, you're just kinda like, "Okay, I'm here to chill and
Totally.
hang around with the people in my business, eat some food, do
Totally.
whatever." Like, the
Yep.
pressure's kind of off, like, to have, a speech and all that kinda stuff, so
Yeah, which must be kinda nice sometimes too, right? Just be like, "Yeah, you know which way the wind's gonna blow here." I totally said this in the when I was talking about Emma Stone, is that to me, it was giving, like, I'm gonna let my hair down quite literally and just come out, have fun with my friends, support my fellow, colleagues, and, have a couple maybe have a drink and relax. I'm not winning, so it wasn't like a winner's dress. It wasn't like a
yeah,
dress where, like, she was worried about having to be photographed in it repeatedly or have a moment kinda dress.
yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. Like, I think those 2 are very similar in that they were, classically chic, kind of modern, um well, yeah, more modern silhouettes, I guess. But yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so definitely no right or wrong answers here, by the way. I'd love to hear from other people too if you're watching, like, what did you think of the fashion if that's your thing?
So
But I
what was
definitely
your kind of, like, "Oh my gosh" moment?
Yeah, so for something completely different, as far as fashion goes, so it was hard for me to pick just one because everybody looked so good last night. The men looked so good last night as well too, but I saw a lot of themes happening. Black and white was a big theme last night. Black and gold was a big theme last night. Brooches were a big theme last night for men. I noticed that. And feathers were a big theme last night, as well as glitter, lots of glitter, like all the things that people like. Glitter, diamonds, which I'm never mad at. Um, Not to sound
Imagine the
cliche.
person having to clean all that up, though.
Oh my gosh, totally. Or guarding it too, like all those diamonds when they're going to after parties, like those
Mm.
things are under lock and key, I'm sure. But Tiana Taylor, I mean, I just kind of was like, kind of took my breath away.
But
She's
did
just a
you have
fashion
one that
killer.
just was like, "Oh, no, what were you thinking?"
I wasn't a big fan of what Amy Madigan was wearing, to be quite honest with you. I wasn't a big fan of the jacket, but it was fine for her. For her,
Yeah.
that's how she's been rocking the suit jacket situation all season. So that was cool for her. Wasn't a big fan of it though, personally for me, but it worked for her. There were a couple that I was like, oh no. There was the actress who voiced Moana.
Okay,
Alili Carrello. She's
okay.
like a young 25-year-old. She came in like a almost like Elle Fanning's, but the bust had 2 like tulips on the bust, like headlights, and it was a butter yellow, and it was like embroidered and had glitter and it had everything. Where Tiana Taylor did a lot, she had sparkle and feathers and like it was tight and corseted like a lot, but it worked. This did not work. I did not like this on this girl. When I found out who she was, I was Googling her for the wrong reasons. And I also thought Chloe Zhao looked insane. I don't know what was going on there. And I've heard people talk about she was wearing like almost like she was going to a funeral, like the black veil, it looked like PVC, kind of like black dress. But I heard that she was doing it in protest because she was trying to bring back a reboot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I heard that reboot got
Yeah,
killed at the
Sarah
studio.
Michelle Gellar had just, like, posted on her Instagram, like, that day or something that Hulu had decided not to go with it.
Okay, so maybe there's some truth to that. I did hear something about she was actually mourning that. She was attached to the picture or to the project. So maybe, but also like Hamnet was a movie that definitely, explored themes around death. And it made sense. She was kind of dressed that way, but it was madness because I
I
just,
must have missed
wow.
whatever because I mean, I think only what I saw of her was some shots in the audience, so where she's sitting, so you're not seeing, like, the full or like,
Right.
even when, like, Jessie Buckley won and I think they got up and hugged, but I don't think she was, like, standing up all the way. She might have been, like,
Yeah.
kind of half sitting and doing a hug or something.
Yeah, I think I saw her there too, and I didn't see the full thing until afterwards, and I was looking at a picture of like the red carpet, and then they showed it from head to toe, and I was like, "Oh wow!" But in the audience, yeah, she took the veil off, she took pieces of it off, so
Oh,
it was
okay.
like whatevs. But yeah, it was a choice for sure. And again, people make choices, and I think if you're at like a point in your career where you're like you are an Oscar winner, you can start to make different choices. So who am I to judge it? But since I am sitting here with a microphone, I'm going to do so. And my favorite, though, honestly, I go back and forth between Tiana Rose Byrne, who looked amazing last night too. I think Chase Infinity. Chase Infinity looks so beautiful. She was really like just from head to toe. I loved the color. I loved the long train. I loved the fact that she wore her hair in micro braids. I loved everything about what she was doing. She looked absolutely stunning. And then I'll also throw in for something totally different. Renata Reinsve was in like a red tube dress with a very high slit. It was like so nothing and everything at the same time. No jewelry, bright red lip, slick back bun. She looked magnificent. It looked so, so good. And she was doing basically nothing. Just the dress was doing the work. And, she had very little jewelry or makeup on. But that's an example of like, it can go really well that way too. So yeah, I don't think there was a lot of misses for me. It was, just one or two that I thought, interesting. What story are you trying to tell here? Jack O'Connor wore fangs as well on the red carpet,
Oh,
bloody
I missed
fangs.
that completely.
Yep. So some people were like, ooh, I thought it was awesome because obviously it made sense for the movie that he was promoting and the story that he was, the continuation of the story he was trying to tell. So I think there were a lot of interesting choices last night. But yes, as I said, fashion is like an aside. I think the pictures are really what people are coming for, but the fashion also sometimes very often connects the story that the
Right.
pictures are telling. So, I was really happy to see, people celebrating storytelling in all its forms, and it was a really diverse year for storytelling. So we can always celebrate that. But yeah, I think we'll wind down from here. Thank you so much for joining me today. And Alchemist, as always, let us know if you're watching this video. Feel free to leave a comment. What were your highlights from this year's Oscars? If you're listening, do the same on the platform in which you're listening. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss when I drop the next video. I will do a full, I was going to say takedown, which was a Freudian slip, breakdown of like the fashion and like the larger story that was happening on the red carpet last night, because there were some interesting looks, some interesting political looks, the whole Timothée Chalamet of it all, and whether he would walk the red carpet or not walk the red carpet. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And as always, Alchemists, see you next time and stay curious.